When we are in fear, stress, the stress hormones shut down the immune system. It's so effective at shutting down the immune system that doctors use stress hormones therapeutically. Meaning, if I want to transplant a foreign organ into a recipient, I don't want the recipient's immune system to reject that organ. I give the recipient stress hormones before transplanting the organ. Because it's so effective in shutting down the immune system, it allows the organ to take hold before the immune system activates. Well, if you're using stress hormones therapeutically to shut down the immune system, what does that mean for the average person who is now living in stress 24/7? And the answer is, we are inhibiting our immune system every day. That immune system is responsible for preventing cancer, because every day normal people create cancer cells, but a healthy immune system will always get rid of it.
But if we look at people's everyday lives and we look at what leads people to make stress hormones today, it's not the tiger coming out of the jungle at us or someone from another tribe chasing us with their spear. It's not those, usually, thankfully, those physical threats to our life. What leads us to make things like adrenaline and cortisol today, block your ears, is caffeine and our perception of pressure and urgency. Now, I choose those words very carefully because we can tend to forget that pressure and urgency is a perception. We actually choose to see our day like that. And what so many people have done is made their email inbox full of stress and pressure and urgency. When we wake up in the morning and we see our day as difficult, or we see it that everything is urgent, when maybe in reality 2 things are actually urgent, we put ourselves into what's called sympathetic nervous system dominance, which is essentially the fight or flight response, and it's adrenaline driving that. So it changes our biochemistry on the inside because it literally thinks our life is in danger, so it prepares us to get away. So the first thing it does is elevate our blood pressure, which is an ongoing problem for so many adults in the Western world. It changes where our blood supply is directed. So normally blood supply is fantastic to our digestive system, but it gets diverted away to the periphery, to the arms and the legs to power us to get out of danger.
So we have 3 types of stress: physical, chemical, and emotional. Physical stress, of course, is trauma, injuries, accidents, falls. Chemical stress is flus, bacterial infections, blood sugar levels, hangovers. Emotional stress, family tragedies, second mortgages, single parenting, 401ks. All of those things knock the brain and body out of balance. And so then, it's a combination of all those things with chronic conditions. And so when we talk about anxiety and depression on a functional brain scan looks exactly the same. Anxiety is when we are knocked out of balance, and when we are knocked out of homeostasis, or knocked out of balance, we turn on what's called the stress response. And when the stress response is turned on, we mobilize enormous amounts of the body's resources for some threat in our external environment. We turn on that sympathetic nervous system, or the fight or flight nervous system. When we begin to mobilize all that energy, of course, it gives the body a rush of adrenaline,
which changes the fuel that your body perceives it is safe to use. So in any given moment, the body is making a decision which fuel to use, and it can only use glucose or fat, or a combination of both. And when your body is on red alert thinking it's got to get out of danger quickly, it needs a fast burning fuel to power it to do that. So take a wild guess between glucose and fat, which is the preferred fuel source in that moment. It's glucose. So I have literally met thousands of people in the almost 20 years that I've been working with people one-on-one who have lost the ability to effectively use their body fat as a fuel because they're always relying on their glucose because of stress hormone production. That's essentially phase 1 of stress, which is high adrenaline. But because with high adrenaline, it creates a lot of inflammation in the body. Now, the body knows that inflammation is the beginning of most degenerative disease. So it's trying to keep you alive, so it needs to dampen down that inflammation. And because historically, adrenaline production was short-lived, we escaped from the danger, we won the fight, whatever happened, but it was short-lived. And now that you've been making adrenaline for the last year or decade, the body says, well, I can't sustain this level of inflammation. I now need to go into the second phase of stress, which is when your cortisol starts to elevate. But when we're producing excessive amounts of cortisol, its job is to slow your metabolism down to get you through a famine. And so your clothes get tighter. And what's most people's response when their clothes get tighter? They think, oh, I better go on a diet. And if you go on a diet, you tend to eat less, which just confirms to your body what it perceives is true, which is that there's no food left in the world. And so it slows your metabolism even further.
The immune system is suppressed because the energy used by the immune system is so great that it will interfere with us avoiding that saber-toothed tiger. I mean, think about it. When a person's sick, they have so little energy, they can't get out of bed sometimes. And I say, yeah, the immune system uses a lot of energy.
If you're tapping the body's resources for some external threat, for the short term, that's great. When the stress is over, the body returns back to homeostasis, and of course, the body builds its resources again. But if you keep turning on that stress response and you can't turn it off, and you're mobilizing all this energy for some threat in your external environment, there's no energy in your internal environment for growth and repair. There's no energy for long-term building projects. It's like there's a war out there, and you're sending all the troops out, and there's no homeland security. And when that happens, melatonin levels go down, of course, which means you're not going to want to sleep, because if there's a predator out there, why would you be vulnerable in the middle of the night? You got to stay awake. So the survival gene switches on, and we get in trouble. And so if it's not a predator that's in the cave or outside the cave waiting for you, which was highly adaptive thousands of years ago, but what if it's your coworker that's sitting at the cubicle next to you, who you resent and despise? Well, that primitive nervous system that was once adaptive is now very maladaptive.
Today's world is 24/7, 365 stress. Our biology was never designed to be in perpetual stress. I say, why is it a problem? Stress hormones are shutting down the immune system. Fear is the primary source of the stress hormones. So fear is the cause of today's healthcare crisis.